there, PA Federationists. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am your first vice president. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we've got another special episode taken from our 2025 State Convention General Sessions. Today, we're going to hear from David DeNotaris. David reflects on how the National Federation of the Blind taught him that it's respectable to be blind, and gave him the confidence to advocate for himself and for others. He encourages everyone to get involved and to stay involved, and reminds us that progress only happens when we work together. One of David's favorite sayings is access equals success, and now here's some access for your success from David DeNotaris from November 15th, 2025.
Hello, National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. This is David DeNotaris. I'm so excited to record this for you. I wish I could be there with you in person. I was not able to, but President Heitz asked me to record this message, and I am so honored to. You know, if I was there in person, I'd say, well, I always like to start with something funny. And I wish I was maybe there to hear your groan. So the man calls his boss and he says, hey, boss, I'm not able to come into work today. The boss says, oh, I hope everything's okay. Oh, yes, he says, everything's fine. I'm just having a problem with my eye. Oh, you're having a problem with your eye, she said. I hope everything's okay. He said, yeah, everything's fine. He said, I just can't see myself coming in. Just can't see. So I tell you that to ask you this. What do you see yourself doing? Where do you see yourself going? Who do you see yourself becoming? How do you see yourself helping the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania get involved and stay involved? I have been so honored to be reading literature from the National Federation of the Blind since 1973. I was 4 years old. I started learning Braille from the New Jersey Commission for the Blind. That's before many of you were on this planet. And I would receive a box in the mail. You know how you like receiving Amazon packages? I'd get so excited to receive a big box in the mail. I think it was a brown box. It was taped. And I'd open it up. And there was maybe 2 or 3 volumes in it. And I remember it was really the only Braille I had. And right on top, it would say National Federation of the Blind, 1800 Johnson Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21230-410-659-9314, Kenneth Jernigan, editor. I remember that was the Braille that I had. I'm so grateful that I had it. We need to be readers, right? I know it's great to have all this great technology, but we must be able to read Braille, hard copy Braille, or Braille on our Braille displays. So many stories, but two I'll share with you. I think it was 1990, and I was home from college. My mother said, I see that there's a technology conference at the Library for the Blind, and the NFB of New Jersey is running a bus trip to that, and I got you a ticket. And I said, Ma, I'm 20 years old, 21 years old. I said, I don't need to attend that. I said, I'm not one of them, I'm not one of those blind people. I don't need that. And she was like, oh, well, I already bought you the ticket. It's too late. You're going. That was my mother. I already bought you the ticket. It's too late. You're going. Thanks, Mom. So she gave me the ticket. She dropped me off at Penn Station. I got on the bus. We go down to the library. There was a lot of technology there. I loved library. I love the technology. I loved exhibit halls. I loved seeing, what the technology was there. And they said, okay, the exhibit hall is closing, and now we need to go and listen to the keynote speaker. I said, well, I'm just going to stay here. They're like, well, you can't stay here because this is closed, and everyone's going into the meeting room. Okay. So I go and, like a good Catholic, I sat in the back row, looking to make a quick getaway. If this was, whatever, boring. So they said our keynote speaker is Dr. Kenneth Jernigan. I'm like, wow, I know that name. I remember reading that name. And so I, I started to listen, and he said something that struck a chord with me, and I wonder if it will strike a chord with you. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, "It's respectable. It's respectable." Help me finish it. It's respectable to be blind. It's respectable to be blind. And he went on to say that if you really believe that you won't be afraid to use the technology, you won't be afraid to read Braille, you won't be afraid to use a cane. It's respectable to be blind. And I think the reason it struck a chord with me is I didn't really believe it. And so I started to chew on that. If I believed that it was respectable to be blind, then I I would have been willing to use a cane. I didn't, and I would have been willing to use assistive tech, but I didn't want to in front of other people. The hardest place to use a cane, the hardest street to use a cane is the one that you live on, right? And I was afraid to use a cane. I was afraid to use Braille in public. I was afraid, right? I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Because I didn't believe it was respectable to be blind. I believed that blindness meant broke. Blindness doesn't mean you're broke. Blindness means you can't see. It's respectable to be blind, and I didn't really learn that until I started hanging around other people like you're spending time with today. It's respectable to be blind. Maybe you don't believe it right now, but I promise you, if you spend enough time with other people who are living and doing and becoming the person they want to be, that you will believe it. It's respectable to be blind. I remember after that talk, I went up to him and I stood in line and I shook his hand. And I said, Dr. Jernigan, my name is David DeNotaris. He said, spell that, please. And I said, Denotaris. He said, Denotaris. I won't forget it. Young man, you've got what it takes. And he shook my hand and he held my hand. He get involved. Get involved, he said. And I did. And it changed my life forever. So I tell you that to tell you this: get involved and stay involved. None of us, or if you're taking notes, write this one down. None of us are smarter than all of us. None of us are smarter than all of us. Get involved, stay involved. Second story. It was probably 5 years later. I was working at the time, but I, I, I wanted to apply for this New Jersey transit service called Access Link. Everybody knows Access Link? Al? Access Link? Oh, I'm getting a ride from Al today. Access Link. Well, when Access Link first began, they were denying blind people. Every blind person I knew who applied was denied. And they were basing it upon, can you board, ride, and disembark a bus independently? Can you board, ride, and disembark a bus independently? And so if you could say, yes, I could board, yes, I could ride, and yes, I could disembark a bus independently, then you were being denied, but not really considering the orientation challenge, that transportation challenge that people who are blind face. So I called up Dr. Jernigan. I said, Dr. Jernigan, I called up the number, 410-659-9314, same number. I hit 0, gone to the operator. This was 20 years ago. I said, Dr. Jernigan, this is David DeNotaris. And I said, yes, David. I said, I'm going for an application for transportation services access link, but people who are blind are being denied the service. Well, he said, all right. He said, do you have something to write with? Because I don't want to waste my breath. I said, yeah, I do. I've got my note taker right here. He said, great. Okay. Let me tell you what's going to happen. And I'm like, oh, you're going to tell me what's going to happen? All right, what's going to happen? He said, you're going to go into the meeting, and there'll be a couple people sitting across the table from you. They're going to ask you some questions. You'll answer the questions. And then the meeting will go on for somewhere around 20, 25 minutes. And then they're going to click their pens. And they're going to say, Dave, thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything else that you want to share? He said, that's when, he says, you move your chair straight up to the desk, and you square yourself up with the presenter, and you say to him, yes. His name was Mr. Rochelle at the time. Mr. Rochelle. I said, Mr. Rochelle, yes, I do have one other thing I want to say. Dr. Jernigan told me to say this. He said, this matter will be settled in the boardroom or the courtroom, and the choice is yours. Point to him. And he said, is there a class action lawsuit? Now, let's pause here for a second. I didn't know what a class action lawsuit was, but he sounded concerned. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, there is, but I'm really not supposed to say that. Oh, so the blind community are organized. I said, very organized. And he said, well, thank you very much. And he got up and he walked me to the door. And don't you know that less than 24 hours later, 8:30 the next morning, I had received a certified letter from the Jersey Transit saying that my application had been accepted. And ever since then, people who are blind or vision impaired have been accepted for access link and transportation services. Dr. Jernigan made a huge difference in the lives of so many people. I love the thought that anyone could count the seeds in an apple. Only God could count the apples in a seed, right? When you help someone, you don't just help them, you help their family, their community. And that's what I've learned from the NFB is a rising tide lifts all ships. We're in this together. And that when we encourage one another, when we believe in one another, when we help one another, we could break down barriers, we could overcome obstacles, we could remove discrimination, and we can live the life that we want. My name is David DeNotaris. It's a privilege to be with you. I thank you for participating. I thank you for being there. Good luck, and God bless you all.
Thanks again to David DeNotaris for not only allowing us to use his presentation from General Sessions at last year's state convention, but also he was one of the sponsors from our state convention. So thank you, David, for all of that and everything that you do for the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. If you want to connect with David, I have some links down below, Facebook and LinkedIn. Sky's the Limit Communications is his company. So take a look in the show notes. You'll see those and connect with David. That'll do it for this episode of White Canes Connect. We'd love to hear from you. There's a couple of ways. First off, by phone, you can leave a voicemail. You've got up to 3 minutes, 267-338-4495. Please leave your name and town if you do leave a voicemail and ask your question. Tell us what you want to hear in future episodes. Whatever you've got, please give us a call, 267-338-4495, or simply email us at whitecanesconnect@gmail.com, whitecanesconnect@gmail.com. Check out past episodes on any of your favorite podcast players or over at whitecanesconnect.com. Thanks again for listening. Take care.